I never thought I would see it. My husband, the man I trusted completely, sitting at our kitchen table, scrolling through dating sites. He smiled at his phone like nothing was wrong, while I stood frozen, the morning light falling on his betrayal. Everything I believed about our perfect marriage was a lie. I couldn't move. James didn't notice me at first. He laughed quietly at something on his screen, and my stomach dropped. Our marriage was supposed to be perfect, so why was he looking for someone else online? I tried to speak, but my voice felt trapped in my throat. I walked closer and saw the profiles, the messages, the photos. Everything I had believed about him, everything I had believed about us, shattered in that instant. I waited until he put his phone down. James, what is this? I asked softly, trying to keep calm. His eyes widened, then he laughed nervously. It's nothing, just browsing. Browsing? I knew better. My hands shook, and I sank into a chair. He kept talking, trying to explain, but the words made no sense. The trust I had in him was gone. Every memory, every promise, suddenly felt fragile. James tried to laugh it off. It's just curiosity, Em. Don't make it a big deal. But I couldn't stop thinking about all the times he had said our marriage was perfect. Every dinner, every weekend, every smile felt like a carefully painted mask. I wanted to scream, but instead I nodded slowly. My heart ached as I realized the man I married could lie so easily. I needed answers, but I didn't know where to start. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every small sound made me jump. James was in the bedroom, pretending to read a book, but I knew he wasn't. My mind replayed the images of his phone, the dating profiles, the messages. I began to notice tiny details I had ignored before. His secretive glances, the phone he always kept with him, his sudden late nights at work. Something was very wrong, and I was no longer blind to it. The next day, I called Sophie. Her voice was warm and calm, but I could tell she sensed the fear in mine. You saw something, didn't you? She asked gently. I told her everything. She didn't judge or interrupt. She only listened and said, You deserve the truth, Em, not this fake perfection. Talking to her made me feel less alone, but it also reminded me that facing James would be harder than I thought. I waited until James was making tea in the kitchen. My heart pounded like a drum. James, we need to talk, I said, trying to sound calm. He froze and looked at me, a flicker of guilt passing across his face. I told him I had seen the dating sites. He stammered, trying to explain, but the words felt hollow. The silence that followed was deafening. I realized then that our marriage was no longer the safe place I had believed it to be. James denied everything at first, saying I must have misread things. My anger flared. How could he expect me to believe him after what I had seen? I shouted, my voice echoing through the house. He finally stopped talking, looking small and ashamed. The perfect man I married seemed to vanish before my eyes, replaced by someone I barely recognized. I wondered if I had ever truly known him at all. I couldn't trust words anymore. I started checking his phone when he wasn't around. At first I felt guilty, but the messages and profiles confirmed my fears. He had been talking to multiple women, pretending our marriage was perfect the whole time. Every text was like a punch to the heart. I felt both anger and sadness, but also a strange sense of power. I finally had proof. I decided to tell Sophie everything in person. We met at a small park in England. The air was cold, but it felt good to speak out loud. Sophie held my hand, whispering, You deserve better than lies, Em. I realized I wasn't alone. Talking to her made the betrayal feel more real, but it also gave me courage. I needed a plan. I couldn't let James keep hiding behind his perfect mask. I decided to confront James with the evidence. I printed screenshots and organized them neatly. When he saw the papers, his face turned pale. I didn't scream or cry this time. I just stared at him. "This is real, James. No more lies," I said firmly. His silence was worse than any excuse he could give. In that moment, I felt a strange mix of fear and relief. The truth was finally out in the open. After the confrontation, James barely spoke. The house felt empty even when he was there. Every time he passed me, his eyes avoided mine. I couldn't decide if I was relieved or more anxious. Silence had become its own punishment. I realized that trust, once broken, doesn't just vanish, it leaves a hollow space you can't fill with words. While cleaning the study, I found old emails and receipts that didn't add up. Subtle signs of his online activity had been there all along, but I had ignored them. The realization hit me hard. I had unknowingly trusted a stranger for years. The more I dug, the more pieces of the puzzle fell into place, painting a picture I wished I could unsee. I met Sophie at a cafe again, my hands wrapped around a warm mug. "There's more," I whispered. I showed her the new discoveries. Her eyes widened, and she held my hand tighter. "You need to think carefully about what comes next," she said. I knew she was right, but deep down, I already knew some things could never go back to how they were. Mrs. Bennet, our nosy neighbor, stopped by with tea. She noticed my tension immediately. "I've seen him acting strangely," she said casually, sipping her cup. At first, I was annoyed by her interference, but then I realized she might be right. James had been hiding more than I imagined, and the cracks in our perfect life were visible to everyone but me. I couldn't live in uncertainty anymore. I decided to confront James one final time, not with anger, but with resolve. I told him I needed clarity, answers, honesty, and proof that our marriage could still survive. If he couldn't give that, I would have to consider leaving. For the first time in months, I felt in control of my own life. The next few days would decide everything. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I opened James's laptop and started searching for clues about his online activities. Every website he visited, every message he sent, was laid bare before me. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and relief. Anger at his lies, betrayal for his deceit, and relief that I finally had the truth. The perfect marriage I believed in was gone, replaced by a reality I wasn't ready for. While digging deeper, I discovered messages that suggested James had been planning to meet one of the women in person. My heart raced, and my hands trembled. The betrayal was no longer virtual, it was real. I felt a surge of fear, but also determination. I needed to act carefully. My life depended on clarity, not assumptions, and I refused to let him manipulate me anymore. I called Sophie again, my voice shaking. "I found something worse," I said. She didn't interrupt. She only said, "Stay calm, Em. You need to plan your next move." Her calmness helped me breathe. I realized I couldn't face this alone. Sophie became my anchor, guiding me through the storm of emotions while I plotted how to confront James without losing control. The next morning, I confronted James with the new evidence. He tried to explain again, blaming stress and loneliness, but the words sounded hollow. I realized that no explanation could undo the repeated betrayals. I didn't shout this time. I simply stared at him. His excuses felt weak compared to the mountain of proof in front of me. For the first time, I truly questioned whether I could forgive him at all. I sat in the living room alone, thinking about what to do next. Leaving felt terrifying, but staying without trust felt impossible. I realized I had to make a decision, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. I started considering options: therapy, separation, or full confrontation. Whatever I chose, it would change everything. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of control over my life again. I called James into the living room. This time, I didn't hold back. "I know everything. No more lies," I said firmly. His face turned pale, and he finally admitted some of the truth. I listened, my heart heavy but steady. The anger surged inside me, but I controlled it. I realized that hearing the truth directly, rather than discovering it alone, gave me a strange sense of power. While checking James's phone one last time, I found a message from a woman asking to meet him that very day. My stomach dropped. I knew I had to act quickly. I didn't want to confront him in anger, but I also couldn't ignore it. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was an immediate threat to our marriage. I realized that some decisions couldn't wait any longer. I met Sophie again to discuss what to do. She listened carefully and reminded me that I deserved honesty and respect. "You don't have to forgive him if you're not ready," she said. Her words gave me courage. I realized I didn't need to decide everything immediately, but I had to set boundaries. It was my life, and I had the right to protect it. I brought all the evidence to him: messages, profiles, receipts. I didn't shout. I simply laid it all on the table. His face paled, and he finally admitted the full extent of his betrayal. There was no denying it anymore. I felt a mix of sorrow and relief. The mask of our perfect marriage was gone, and the reality was harsh, but at least it was real. After hours of talking, I realized that forgiveness wasn't guaranteed, and our marriage might never return to what it once was. I needed time to think, to heal, and to decide whether I could trust him again. The truth hurt, but it also gave me clarity. For the first time in months, I felt that I had control over my own choices, not him. I finally gave James an ultimatum. Either we rebuild our marriage with complete honesty, or we end this now, I said firmly. His face fell, and he nodded slowly, realizing the seriousness of his actions. I wasn't bluffing. For the first time, I truly put myself first. The choice was mine, and I was no longer afraid to act on it. That night, I sat by the window alone, looking out at the quiet street. The betrayal still hurt, but I felt a strange calm. I realized I couldn't change the past, but I could control what happened next. The future felt uncertain, but I also felt empowered. For the first time, I understood that my happiness depended on me, not him. The next day, James agreed to therapy and complete transparency. We started taking small steps, talking honestly, setting boundaries, and rebuilding trust slowly. It wasn't easy, and some wounds felt too deep to heal quickly. But I realized that even tiny steps toward honesty mattered. I wasn't sure if we'd fully recover, but at least the truth was no longer hidden. Weeks later, I noticed James hesitating with his phone in the evening. I didn't need to snoop this time. He told me honestly about a message he had received, and I could see his sincerity. It was a small test of trust, but it showed me that change was possible. I felt cautious hope growing in my chest. Healing was slow, but it was happening. Months later, our marriage wasn't perfect, but it was real. We laughed again, argued less, and spoke openly. I knew that trust could be rebuilt, but only with effort and honesty. Looking back, I realized that seeing James's betrayal was the hardest moment of my life, but it also forced me to take control and decide my own path. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it felt like mine.